this law of non-contradiction and the principles of logic are violated in attempts to undermine Christian theism. I once had a discussion with a fellow who had been the valedictorian of Carnegie Mellon Institution in chemical engineering, and he was arguing against the existence of God. And we were having a discussion about this over the table in a restaurant. And he began by saying boldly that there's no scientific evidence or rational evidence for the existence of God. And so I began to engage with him in discussion and took him to the place where he recognized, as well as I recognized, that logic required him, from the premises we had agreed upon, to agree to the conclusion that God exists. But he refused to go there. And I said, how can you resist that conclusion? And he said to me, I grant that the argument is compelling and that logic demands that I must affirm the existence of God, but I don't believe in logic. Now, I know this, that if I would have walked into that restaurant before having had that discussion with this scientist and said to him up front, do you believe in logic? He would have said, of course, it's half of the scientific method. How can I be a scientist and deny the rules of logic? That's what he would have said. But I didn't ask him that in advance. But as we were in the midst of this argument, and he saw that logic required for him to affirm something he didn't want to affirm, he retreated to the position of denying the validity of logic. And I said, fine. So you don't believe in the law of non-contradiction? He said, no. I said, good. So I stopped right then and there. Didn't say another word. And he continued to probe. He continued to talk to me, and I ignored him. I just sat there and ate my dinner. And he was getting more and more annoyed at me because he was speaking and I wasn't answering. I wasn't responding to him. And finally I looked up at him and I said, would you please pass me the salt? And he reached over and picked up the salt shaker and handed it to me, and he said, here. I said, whoa, wait a minute. You mean you can distinguish between a salt shaker that is a salt shaker and not a salt shaker at the same time, the same relationship? I said, actually, you do believe in the law of contradiction because I can have a meaningful discussion with you as long as it's not about God. If I want to talk to you about salt shakers, then all of a sudden you become rational. You see, one of the philosophers that I studied when I was in seminary made this observation, that it's easy for people to deny the validity of the law of non-contradiction, but that all denials of the law of non-contradiction are forced and temporary. They are forced and temporary. That is, people only deny the validity of this law when it suits them, when they want to avoid a conclusion that they don't want to have to embrace. And I've learned a long time ago in theological discussion and philosophical debate that when the opponent denies the law of contradiction, the argument's over. I don't want to go any further. If the person says, I don't believe in rationality, I can say, fine. At least you are saying that your alternative to Christian theism is, by your broadcast, manifestly irrational. And that's all we're trying to show in apologetics, that if you're going to be rational, if you're going to be reasonable, then you have to affirm the existence of God. And if the only way you can escape the existence of God is by denying rationality, then go ahead and do it. That's what we're trying to demonstrate in the first instance.